You've got your response drop-down menu from here, most of which you're not going to need to use because it's all going to be contained over here. The one thing that you're going to need to do is work with teacher tools. Now in Smart Response you have the actual, this is the quiz, the lesson that you're going to create is all contained within this screen. The teacher tools, like this. This is your, it contains all the students and the student IDs. It contains your information as a teacher. So the first time that you open it up, it's not going to look like, it'll ask for your information. Mr., Mrs., and then it'll ask you to fill out all this information, okay? Every time you do a Smart Response or Senteo quiz, you're going to have the option to do it in anonymous mode or track your students. So if you're doing something really quick, like we're going to do a quiz tonight together, I'm going to put it in anonymous mode. It's real quick. You don't have to log in student IDs. But the downside of it is you can't track results. So after each question, when you have the flexibility, or after the end of the test, when you have the flexibility of looking at scores, you don't know who is who. Okay, so anonymous mode is good for something quick that you want to do, an introductory lesson, maybe a quick SOL review when you're not really concerned about how each individual is doing, just kind of getting a picture of the class as a whole. Then anonymous mode is what you're going to want to work on. But if you want to be able to track your students, you're going to have to actually add a class, which you can do here or here. Now the easiest way to do this is in every school, they have data that they pull down from ESIS, which has all the student IDs for each room. All the student IDs, homeroom, block, each of your blocks. And each teacher should have those, and you can if you want, you can import it directly into this right here, so that you don't have to fill out the information. But if you didn't want to, it would look something like this. I'm going to sit down because it's going to take some typing. Let's say this class is 5 minutes. Let's put down first period, location, pick one option, passing grade 50, add. All right, so here's my class, and I can add students to my class. There's 2 different ways to do this. If I click right here, where it says add students to your class, what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to import an Excel file, technically a CSV file. And that's what ESIS downloads. So if your teacher goes to ESIS, prints off a report, every student's name and ID is in there, you can pop it right in here and it'll do it for you. Alternately, you can go up here to where it says students, click that, and then enter the information. Student ID, 1, 2, 3, 4 is John Smith. And of course, you wouldn't have any email. And the way this works is when you hand out the clickers, the students will turn them on and they will put in their user ID. And if John put in 1, 2, 3, 4, it would say, welcome John Smith. That way, everything could be tracked. And so at the end of your test, when you have assessment results, you'll see how each individual student did. That's completely up to you. You have to evaluate, based on the lesson or quiz you're about to give, whether it is worth tracking student results or whether you'd rather do it anonymously. Okay? That's how you add students, 2 different ways, manually entering them or importing them. Okay? So that's teacher tools. If you want, up here you have a simulator that you can click and it will work just like this. Now this is actually interactive. This is not just a stale, static image. What you can see right now is this clicker right here, this imaginary clicker is connected to my receiver. I have the receiver plugged into my computer and it says, do I want to join McGee? Well, yeah, I do. So now it's joining it and it's welcomed me to it. There's no questions up there because I haven't started the assessment. And that is one very, very, very important thing to remember, is that every time you do a Senteo quiz, you have to start the class and you have to start the quiz. And we're going to do that together here in a moment, but I want to remind you of that because teachers all the time say, well, it's not working. And I ask them, well, have you started both? And no, they've only started one. And that's what, right now, this screen says, welcome McGee, but there's no questions because I haven't actually started the assessment. Okay? So always keep that in mind. We'll actually show how that works out here in a bit. So let's work through Senteo and how to create it. It's very user-friendly. There's really only a handful of options, so you can't really get lost because they don't give you too many options. So I come over here and click on that Senteo tab. It's going to ask me what I want to do. If I want to import the questions from a file, I can either grab them from an exam view file, a Word file, or an XML file. An exam view also exports to XML. All right. Word, one thing that I've noticed with Word is that if you have more than, say, 200 questions, it's going to get a little glitchy. When you're importing from Word, if you have a Word test that you prepared, make sure that when you're preparing the Word document that there's a clear break between each question. Because if there's not, let's say your line spacing changes from question to question, Smart Response is going to get all confused and it's going to put half of a question on one page and half of it on another page. So it's going to get a little glitchy. Okay? So generally what I see most people do is create these quizzes from scratch. So what we can do is we can ask a question now. Let's say we want an instant true or false. We want to insert, I want it on this page. If I go to next steps, I want to go back to the computer because it started the assessment. Let me stop the class real quick. Because I started the class already, it's starting this quiz. I don't want that to happen. Okay. All right, so if I go out, I can either go from here or I can go up here. Up here, I want to insert a title page. All right, so this is just going to be a test. This is an assessment. And this really doesn't matter, but this is achieving 580, and the topic is an intro. That's something very basic. Once I have a title page, then things become a bit more clear up here. And you're going to be working on this tonight so that you'll get some immediate practice. I can fill out the grade, and the subject, and the date. And then I can insert text boxes. I can make objectives on this page, or in the next page I can make it like a Smart Notebook file. So if I wanted to, I can add a page up here and then add my objectives. And as part of your lesson, you're going to have your objectives on here. But here I want to add a question to the next page. And you have 5 choices. Yes or no, true, false, pretty similar. Multiple choice, multiple answer, or a number, fraction, and decimal. So let's say we want to do a multiple choice. All right. So here's where the question goes. Something very basic just to start off. I'd add a question mark. So you get 5 choices. I'm just going to put abbreviations. I only want 4 choices. So let me change that. Go next. Select the correct answer. Now here's where I have a choice. I can put the correct answer in, or I can make it an opinion question. As part of your lesson, you're going to be required to have at least one opinion question somewhere in your quiz. Specify how many points there are, and you can put an explanation, which appears on the assessments, but it's not necessary, and finish. And that's how it shows up. very simple, very straightforward. You can really create a quiz very quickly by typing it in like that. But because I want, in this lesson, I want you to be able to mess with all the aspects of your program. I want you to be able to format the background. I don't, as required in your lesson, none of your screens can be white. I know that from time to time when you do a lesson, that's going to be appropriate, and I have no problem with that. But as part of this lesson, I want each screen to have some sort of color, gradient, pattern, or image so that I can see you have experience with working with it. So I can create a solid color, or I can create a gradient. It goes from here, this color to this color. Pattern fill, which really are more distracting than they are anything else. But I know some of these are so dark that you would literally need to change the text color. Or an image fill. What I would do is I would click that browse button, and it will go to my pictures, and then I can add a picture in there. And you'll see that show up when we take a quiz together. Okay? When you go back to Senteo, you got 3 tabs here. Under Properties, you click Answer Key just to make sure that you did in fact pick the correct answer, and I didn't. It is March. I fixed that. Under Progress, I can start this assessment. Once the assessment is started, this will populate with options like, do you want to see a bar graph, things like that, and then next steps. I can end the test. I click Make it a content page. That means I make it an actual smart notebook page. And this is useful if, let's say, you're going to have some diagrams, or reading comprehension, you're going to have an entire story. Here you would have the story or the diagrams, and maybe on the next page you would actually add a question to the next page. And so you could flip back and forth between the two. But I'm going to actually add a follow-up question on a new page after this. So the follow-up question would relate to whatever is on the screen. But in this case, I just want to add a question. Okay, let's ask one more question. I like chocolate. False, this is an opinion question. And finish. Properties, did I get it right? Yeah, it's an opinion. So you can make sure that you always have everything correct. And part of your requirements of this lesson is that your answer key is fully filled out and it is correct. Okay, because I will be checking to make sure everything is appropriate. Because it does happen where, and I've been in teachers' classes where they created a lesson, they're so excited, then we get into the lesson and all the students are getting every question wrong. We're like, how is this possible? And they filled out the answer key wrong. So it does happen, and it's quite embarrassing because it doesn't work out the way they wanted to. All right? Progress again, start this assessment. Next steps, do I want to add a question? Do I want to make it a content page? And test here. Very straightforward, very simple to work with. But as you'll see in the one that I created for us to work through tonight, you can do a lot with it. But because we had some experience last week working with Smart Notebook, then it's a lot easier for us to work through. Okay? Import the questions, export them too. So once you're done, you will get a page where, well, basically over here, and you'll see this when we go through it, you'll see some graphs, bar graphs, pie graphs. You can flip back and forth, but you can also export the results so that if you want to save them and you want to use them in your grade book, then you can save them as a CSV file or into Excel, which are one and the same, or a web page. Okay? You can also start the class right from here.